Hey everyone, a couple weeks ago I did a video about planning a simple day trip. Like, what do I go through when I'm planning just a simple day trip, want to go out for the day? Let's talk about something a little bit longer. Let's go. Good morning, everyone. It is good to see you all. I haven't shot a video in quite some time because I was in Norway, and I lined up a bunch of videos to run while I was gone, so it's good to be shooting video again. I have a bunch of errands that I'm going to run today, but while I'm doing that, I want to talk about planning bigger trips. Not mammoth trips, but bigger than the day trip that I talked about a few weeks ago. I started planning a trip before I went to Norway with my friend Johnny, who I paddle with a lot. And the trip that we wanted to plan was in the North Core Banks, and it was to paddle to Portsmouth Village on the north end of the North Core Banks, which is south of Ocracoke and Hatteras, what is really the Outer Banks. And the sole reason I picked that as a destination is like 4 times I've been stymied when I try to get there. Either the weather was no good, or we ran out of daylight, or we just ran out of time. For whatever reason, 4 times I've tried to get to the end of the North Core Banks to the Portsmouth Village area, which looks in pictures really cool, but I've never been able to make it happen. So originally our plan was to put in at Harker's Island and race north. It's about 40 miles up, 40 miles back. Turned out neither of us could really make that work time-wise. So we sort of just started scouring the coast, looking for places where we could put in the boats and park our vehicles. Now, if you've read my book, Go, which is available on Amazon, which is a trip planning book, this is sort of transitioning from the overview phase to the detail phase, right? So the overview is put in somewhere north of Harker's Island and paddle to Portsmouth Village and make it a couple days, which then gives us an amount of time and mileage, and then we can figure out where we want to stop and all that. It's like, is this viable? Is this feasible? It is, but then we got to dig in and really find the plans, right? And so we started digging in, and then I went to Norway and forgot to sort of reach out to someone where I was thinking about putting in. That's when I asked Johnny to step in, and he did an amazing job, and we chatted while I was in Norway.
Mr. Friedman.
Mr. Johnny. Amazing job.
It was so much fun.
I'm glad.
Like
So wait,
I never told you how I
right. So we started off. We were going to be at the marina attached to where the ferry goes. Then that didn't work out, and then we were looking at the seafood place further south, and that didn't work out. How did you find this guy?
Looking at the Google map there, and I was looking for other places that looked like a put in. And as you up there on that end of Cedar Island, I was investigating the dock because it shows boat ramp, but it's inside the nature preserve.
Right.
So wanted to find out if we could park there. The short answer to that is cars are not allowed to stay there overnight. I have an addendum with that in a little bit later. So just looking in that area, I saw a pin dropped up, like Highway 12 comes in and it curves off to the northwest, northwest. And there's a pin drop there right next to something called the Great Pond, which is a protected little inlet.
Yep.
And I'm like, and there's somebody that does rental properties. Let me call him.
Where the catamaran is.
Where the catamaran is. He also has a house further southeast down, which is what we were initially talking about. That's the place that has a dock that's in disrepair. When you look on the map, it looks like it could have a beach. But that's when he said, well, my house right here, it's got beach and boat ramp.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
so
it turns out to be a nice guy.
So he's just cool with us parking there and launching there. That is bloody perfect. Now, I don't have charts here in Norway with me, go figure.
Why would?
But
Yeah.
I did quick sort of math on Google Earth, and it looks like it's only now about 15 miles with a slightly longer crossing and a couple of ways to do it depending on where the wind is. I've already looked at tides. It doesn't look like there's a particularly big tide then, and I think the low is at about noon. So are you still good to meet there on Friday?
Yeah.
And so I would still say let's plan on like a 10 o'clock Friday on the water. So I'll probably leave at like 4 a.m. That will get me there at 8. That'll give me time. Yeah. So I guess my only question for him is, does he care where vehicles are left?
Yes, but he's hoping to be there. But if he's not there, there will be other people around. But he has said that, yeah, there's certain places that will have you parked that will be out of the way, but there's plenty of space to do that.
Okay. I would say let's plan on going straight to Portsmouth Village. That's what it's called, right? Let's plan on going straight there. If we don't make it there on day one, that's fine. But it's 15 miles. We should, as long as the weather isn't beating us up, we should be able to do that. And so, yeah, cool. Amazing job. Congratulations, you have graduated. You're on your own now.
Thank you.
So the other things that I did at this time, right? I dove hard into the charts to figure out distances and times, but I wanted to have, the plan was to put in relatively close and only do about 20 miles up, 20 miles back. I wanted to plan to have, in case we needed to get off the water, beaches that we could go to. So we weren't committed to the whole 20 miles each day. One of the problems with the North Core Banks is that it all looks the same when you're on the water, and it's really hard to find campsites. So I scrolled through Google Earth looking for things that looked like landable campsites or piers or docks, and did find a number of options. And then I plotted those on the chart so that I was like, from this position on the chart, it's this compass bearing directly into the campsites. Because everything looks the same, it would make it much easier. I also figured out the latitude and longitude from Google Earth and manually added those into my handheld GPS. Because my GPS is so old, it will no longer communicate with computers. I think this is the last trip that GPS is doing.
There we go.
Good to see you.
Good to see you as well, Mr. World Traveler.
Good to be back.
Did not take you quite as long to get back as it did to go over.
Man. Before we get into weather, are we good? Are we good to go in terms of our getting on the water point Friday morning at 8:30?
Getting on the water.
Well, getting there getting to our point at 8:30. He's cool.
Yeah. But yeah, we're good. I'm excited. I'm hoping he's as cool as he comes across.
As he seems to be, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so
wind is looking better. I'm happy to say.
Yeah.
And even at 50, I was like, shit, at least it's blowing us where we want to go.
Well, and that's what I was going to ask you. So I looked at it very quickly. Like you sent me the thing about the weather, and I was like, I'll look at the weather when I get back. And then like an hour later, I was like, wait a minute, why is he worried about weather? So I went and I looked. And so what I saw then was, so then I was like, I looked at the weather. I was like, okay, the weather is not bad. The wind was like 12 to 25, which is more than I would like for an open water crossing to start my day. But then I saw the gusts was like, wait a second, gusts to 50.
Right.
And I was like, okay, that's more than I want to deal with. But you know what? This is still also 5 days out. So what I would have said was, let's do a go, no go call on Thursday and see what it looks like. But I have not pulled up real weather apps this morning. I just pulled up weather.com. And when you do weather for here, are you looking at Atlantic, North Carolina? Is that what you're using?
I'm using Cedar Island.
Cedar Island. Okay. Let me switch to Cedar Island.
Yeah. It's actually come down, and the good thing is if we paddle the rate we expect to, which should even be more because the winds are blowing north, we'll be to our destination before the height of the gusts ever arrive.
Yeah, and so what I was seeing was that, I don't want to paddle in 50s, certainly, but it looked like on Friday, the day that we're paddling north, it's pushing us north, and on Saturday, the day that we're probably paddling back, it's pushing us south. I was like, well, if we're going to have wind, at least it's pushing us.
So wait, are you anticipating coming back Saturday? Like we're staying the night and then coming back?
Yeah, so my plan is if we can do it in 2 days, let's do it in 2 days, but if we need more time, we've got more time. Okay. And then what I was going to say was, because I hadn't really looked at the wind until just now, I was going to say we could also push a day to just sort of lose this sort of safety factor, like we could sit on the beach and wait for weather. We lose that factor. So I would still say let's plan on putting on getting there at 8:30, paddling there, and if we can make the whole thing in the day, let's make the whole thing in the day. If not, we've got places we can pull off in terms of safety and such. So, yeah. So if we can do it, let's do it. But I think it's going to be either way. It's either going to be a lot of miles and a lot of slogging and weather, or it's going to be dealing with a big push, or I think it's going to be sporty is what it's going to be.
Yeah.
Either way. Yeah, I'm right now seeing wind 11, wind 12 to 15. Let me pull up.
What?
That was weather.com. I want to go to a wheel weather app now. A real weather app now. So windy.
Yeah, I've been looking at using that weather app, the replacement for dark sky. Well, it's still the weather app. It was always the weather app, but
Yeah. Find your spot, and we're looking at Friday. Oh yeah, this is still calling for big wind. Yeah, this is still calling for gusts to 52. So
but
not until late.
Late.
Yeah.
According to the weather app, Saturday really comes down quickly. Like by, let's say we were getting on the water by 10 o'clock again. At that point, it's 18 with gusts of 28.
Yeah.
Coming not quite as friendly, and when I say this, I'm not pushing to not come back until Sunday. Sunday is showing wind directly out of the north, pushing south.
Yeah.
Saturday is showing coming out of the northwest to southeast, except for, and then it starts to switch at 3 p.m. It's heading straight south, and by 4 p.m.
What day are you on?
Northeast. I'm on Saturday.
I'm on Saturday also. Yeah. So Saturday wind is dropping. By noon, wind is down to 14 with gusts of 21 from the northwest. Yeah. The real low is around sunset, which isn't surprising, but so let's continue. Let's make a go no go call on Thursday. We can just repeat this and sort of see how it changes. And I'm also not opposed to getting there and eyeballing it with binoculars and saying, nope, this isn't going. I mean, I don't want to do that, but if that's what it looks like. But yeah, I don't want to be paddling in 50 knot gusts. That's not happening. I mean, that's well after dark at this point. But even there, we'd have to storm-proof camp pretty well. Mm-hmm. But this is saying a solid 30 at 6 p.m.
Yep.
Solid 23 at noon. So, so let's do that. Let's see what it's looking like and figure out how spicy we want to deal with and play it by ear. But yeah. So while I was really hammering the route on the charts and distances and mileages, and I guess that's the same thing, I was also prepping my gear. Because I'd been out of town, gear was all over the place, so I had very little time to pull all my stuff together. I started prepping food, getting that ready to go, and this is the part where I cut to video of the trip. but I can't. Yep, so I got COVID somewhere on my trip back. I picked it up, or just before we left Norway, I think, actually. I picked it up, and just, I couldn't go. I was just way too sick. But, as Johnny said, we've now got this trip wired and ready to go. And as soon as we can find really 3 or 4 days, we can make it happen. And so that was the process that we went through. It was a lot of chart work. It was a lot of like scrounging for campsites. We also had issues with weather. I don't know how we would have managed the weather. Is that we were looking at 50-mile-an-hour gusts for our first day and 30-mile-an-hour gusts for the second day. We were ready to do it, but I think that would have been a lot to deal with. So that's the sort of the process that I used. And as I mentioned earlier, all of this is laid out in my book Go, which you can pick up on Amazon. There are links down below. Do me a favor, hit like if this was helpful to you. I hope it was. And I'll see you on the water. Might be unloading floating boats.